Let us wait for a few minutes for others to join. Okay. So till now we saw. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So till now we saw Navier-Stokes equations, which involves continuity and momentum. These two equations. Actually, there are four equations in three dimensions. Momentum equation is a vector equation. Continuity is just one equation, mass conservation. And then we saw non-dimensionalization in the last few uploaded lectures. How to non-dimensionalize Navier-Stokes equations, and what was the purpose of non-dimensionalization? That the new equations or the new parameters in those equations are dimensionless. They don't have any units. Okay? They are just numbers. So they are equally valid for any scale, given that the dimensionless numbers that appear there should be same for both of those scales that we are talking about. Then both of them will be dynamically similar, both of those situations at different scales, if the dimensionless numbers are same, because the equations will become exactly the same. Okay? So that was the purpose of non-dimensionalization. So we can talk about any scale given the Reynolds or Froude or other numbers are same. If we are talking about Reynolds number equal to 1, let's say, no matter what individual quantities are, so Reynolds number is written as rho u L by mu. No matter what individual L, U, rho and mu are, you will get the same result. Of course, only if only Reynolds number appears in the dimensionless equation. If Froude number appears in the equations or some other dimensionless numbers appear, then those numbers also you have to consider. But let's say only Reynolds number appears in the equations. Then if Reynolds number is 1, then you have just one equation which is same for any case that you consider. If you have different u, L, mu, rho, but their combination, which is Reynolds number, if that is always 1, then the equations are exactly the same. Okay, that was the purpose of non-dimensionalization. It becomes more general. Then we talked about Buckingham pi theorem, which helps you identify a different dimensionless groups. Okay, even if you don't know the equation, even if you just know the parameters that affect your solution. So if you knew that velocity is UVW, which is actually you can call it just a velocity, some length in the problem, viscosity of the fluid, density of the fluid, um, time, all of these things, let's say, affect your solution, and the solution that you are looking for is, let's say, the force being applied on a ship. Then you can find out how many dimensionless groups you will get out of these. So Buckingham pi theorem helps you identify that. So there was an uploaded lecture on this Buckingham pi theorem that we saw. So now we'll talk about, and we also talked about the solution to Navier-Stokes equation for simple problems like a Couette flow, which had a fixed plate at the bottom and a moving plate on the top. Okay, and liquid filled in between, and we saw that the velocity profile is linear at a given cross section. Okay, this is moving with some velocity u. Okay, so now we'll talk about some other results that we can derive from Navier-Stokes equations. So we will, because we are talking about analytical solutions of Navier-Stokes equations, we are not going to fully solve the complete Navier-Stokes equation. We are going to have some assumptions. Okay, the first such assumption, which is common, which gives good results, good enough results. The assumption is inviscid flow assumption. Or in simple words, inviscid flow. What is the meaning of inviscid? Viscid refers to viscous. Inviscid means not viscous. So if you set viscosity to 0, or specifically in the Navier-Stokes equation, if you see, you have rho du by dt equal to minus del p plus mu del square v, or u in this case, plus rho g, and other forces if there are other forces. So here, if this term mu del square v goes to 0, so either mu is 0 or del square u is 0, any one of those. Basically, effect of viscosity, viscous terms are 0, viscous stresses are 0. Then we call it an inviscid flow. The fluid itself need not be inviscid, but the flow has to be inviscid. So what is an inviscid flow? Where this term goes to 0. Mu may be non-zero. Okay. There is no such fluid. This is also known as an ideal fluid if the viscosity of that fluid is 0. And there is no such fluid whose viscosity is 0. Maybe under some extreme conditions you may reach viscosity close to 0, but there is no such fluid. there is always some loss, some friction between the layers. Okay. So now what equation do you get? Rho du by dt minus del P plus rho g. This is also known as, these are, because these are three equations in three dimensions, these are known as Euler equations. These are very common in physics, astrophysics, uh, or yeah. So if you are solving for, let's say, formation or life of a star, let's say, or something in the galaxies, okay, flow inside the galaxies, then people use Euler equations because these are easier to solve, and also it gives pretty good results. Also, people apply these equations for common fluids such as air, water, which are not very viscous. So for those fluids, you can apply these equations. Okay. Now you might have heard about Bernoulli's equations. A Bernoulli equation. It is a single equation, Bernoulli equation or Bernoulli theorem. Uh, you must have seen a diagram like this. There is a pipe whose cross section is changing along its length. There is a cross section here. There is a cross section here. This is at some height z1. This is at some another height z2 from some reference. Okay. And then you write about pressure at these 2 points. Let's say P is some general pressure at any point in this pipe, P by rho. V is the velocity, magnitude. So if U and V are the velocity components, then this capital V that we are writing here is root U square plus V square. So this is the velocity magnitude of that velocity vector. V square by 2 plus Gz is constant. Or you can write P1 by rho, if this is point 1, this is point 2, P1 by rho plus V1 square by 2 plus Gz1 equals P2 by rho plus V2 square by 2 plus Gz2. Because this quantity is a constant, so at every cross section, this is going to be same. So this you might have heard. Can you raise your hands if you have seen this equation before or remember seeing it somewhere, Bernoulli equation? Okay, so let's discuss it more. Essentially, what we are talking about is different terms here which add up to give a constant. Uh, Gz, if you see this quantity, this gives some idea about a potential, right? Gravitational potential in this direction, potential energy, you can say. So this is from the gravitational head, you can call it. If you divide the entire thing by G, you get heights basically, right? So let me divide it. E by rho g plus v square by 2g plus z equal to constant. Okay. Before this, let us talk about something else so that we know how pressure or energy can be seen in terms of heights. Because here each term should have the same dimension, okay, for it to be dimensionally consistent. And what is the dimension here for each of the terms? It is height, because z is a height, this is also some height, and this is also some height. So how height can be seen as energy or pressure? Let us see that. Let's say you have a tank filled with water here, and there are various pipes connected with it. These are different kinds of pipes connected with this. Let me say the level by this red line. Now, what will be the level in the first, second, third, and fourth pipe? Okay, let me ask it this way. In which of these pipes the level will be highest, the water level? Can you write it in the chat window? Okay. So, so actually the answer is that the level will be same in all of these. Will be like this. Uh, why? Because we have already seen it is the Pascal's law that at the same height the pressure is same. So if the gravity is acting this way. So what is the pressure? Pressure just depends on what? Let us see the formula again. Rho g h. We have derived this in the first few classes. So what is the pressure at this point? If this height is h, this is atmospheric pressure, then the pressure at the bottom of this container is P atmosphere plus rho gh. That is the pressure at the bottom of the container, which is the same everywhere at the bottom of the container, right? And what will be the pressure? The pressure above these pipes is P atmosphere. And what will be the pressure here? It is P at the bottom minus rho gh. And that will give you P atmosphere. So the H should be same for all of these also. to reach P atmosphere at that level. Is this clear? Is there any question in this? Okay, I hope this is clear. So the water level will be same throughout. It will be H. And this is a static. Sorry, there was some connection issue. So we can see that pressure depends on density, gravity, which are constant throughout the liquid. Gravity is same. The only difference can be in the height. So pressure and height are very closely related. Okay, and you can see the shape of the container does not matter. It is just the height that matters. If there was a very thick pipe, let's say this big, connected here, the water level will be same as in a thin pipe. Okay, you can notice this if you have, let's say, overhead water tanks, and there are two tanks which are connected to each other. The water levels will be exactly the same in both the tanks. And let's say uh, you have a tank like this, and the other tank is at some height. So you made a pedestal like this, and you have another tank here. Then what will be the water level in the second tank? It will be the same height, because if it is connected, the pressure will transmit from one tank to the other, and the pressure at this level and the pressure at this level, what will be the difference between them? It will be rho g h, this height. Okay, and the pressure here and the pressure at this location will be same. So you will, some of the tank will remain empty even if this tank is full. So this is not advisable to have the tanks at different heights if they are connected in series, if they are connected like this. Okay, so this Bernoulli's equation, what it says is that this is also known as pressure head, this height h. So this is the head due to gravity, this z, gravitational potential. So when the water is rising in this tube against gravity, it gains some potential energy. So if you consider this as an expression of energy conservation, then you can see it that way. The water is rising in this tube, gaining the potential energy, thus losing some pressure and some velocity. Okay? So this is the head due to velocity, how much energy there is in the water because of its kinetic energy. And this is the head because of pressure. How much energy is there due to the pressure in that liquid. So if you measure the pressure somehow using some probes, you will see a difference between this point and that point. There are different instruments for measuring pressure that we have seen, I think, venturimeter, manometer. Okay. And how this can be derived? There are a few things which we have not talked about here. The assumptions, basically. We'll talk about them. How you can derive this? You can derive this from these Euler equations. So instantly you notice that the assumption involved here is inviscid flow. If viscosity plays a very big role here, then these equations will not be valid. Euler equations will not be valid. Therefore, Bernoulli equation will also not be valid, or there will be a significant error. Then it has to be steady, because we are talking about one velocity here. This velocity is not dependent on time. We are talking about a steady flow. The other assumption is incompressible flow, which we have already taken into account while deriving the Euler equations. So this equation plus del dot u equal to 0. So when we don't write the full continuity or mass conservation equation, and also when we write mu del square u, that means we by default we are using this assumption that the fluid is incompressible or the flow is incompressible. So you have to solve this del dot u equal to 0 along with the Euler equations, which I have written here, the momentum equation. So incompressible flow. As well as there is one more assumption that the flow should be along a streamline. So this equation we are solving along a streamline. So what it means by this, we are not just saying that the energy here and the energy at that point is related by this equation. We are actually saying that it is only true for a particular streamline. So there is a line like this, and you can apply this equation only at 2 points along this streamline, 1 and 2. You cannot apply this equation. Let's say it is within this pipe, both of these streamlines. This is point 3, this is point 4. So if you want to state it very precisely, then you cannot apply this equation between point 1 and 4. Although they are approximately at the same cross section in the pipe, this point 2 and 4 and 1 and 3, you cannot apply it between point 1 and 4. It can only be applied between point 1 and 2 or 3 and 4. Okay. Now, uh, to explain it further, let's say you have a T joint in a pipe. There is an inflow like this. This is one streamline. This is another streamline, let's say. And if you want to apply it, let's say this is point 1, this is 2, this is T, and this is 4. You cannot apply Bernoulli's equation between point 1 and 2 because these are two separate streamlines and the results will be very different. In the earlier example, this pipe example, which is rising against gravity, even if you apply Bernoulli's equation between point 1 and 4, you will get a very small error. But if you apply it here in case of a T joint, you will get a significant error. Okay? But you can apply Bernoulli's equation between point 1 and 3 or 2 and 4. Now how to derive this equation? I will not go into that. I'll just upload the video, a lecture where the derivation is given. Right now we'll just focus on its applications. Is this part clear? Is there any question? Okay, so we'll move ahead. Some applications of Bernoulli equation. Let's say you have a converging channel like this, channel or pipe, and you know the inlet velocity u. Okay, and let's say the pressure is P1, Q1, and the velocity here is u2, and the pressure is P2. Now if we take this central streamline and the gravity is in this direction, now can you tell me the relationship, not the exact relationship, but which one is higher, which one is lower? Is u1 greater than u2 or less than u2? E1, is it greater than P2 or less than P2? Can you write it in the chat window? So how will you decide this first of all? Um, so let me just give some clue how you can decide this. The relationship between u1 and u2 first you have to decide, and then you can apply Bernoulli's equation, which is P by rho g plus V square by 2g equal to a constant, because z is not changing in this problem along that streamline. So there is a relation between P and V that you will get. So if you know what is the relationship between u1 and u2, then you can find out the relationship between p1 and p2. How can you find the relationship between u1 and u2? That is from the conservation of mass or continuity equation. So what is the continuity equation applied for cross sections like this? That is a1 v1 equal to a2 v2, or a1 u1 equal to a2 u2. So just use these things, continuity and Bernoulli equation, to find out the greater than or less than signs between these u1 u2 and p1 p2, and write it in the chat window. So I've written both the equations here. Others also, please write.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I type in the chat box, but I think my net is not working that well. So,
No, we got your solution.
okay, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's see this. So this is correct. That U2 will be greater than U1 because area of cross section is less at point 2 than point 1. So U2 is greater than U1. Now what about P1 and P2? P1 by rho g plus V1 or U1 square by 2g is a constant. So this whole term is a constant. So this should be equal to P2 by rho g plus U2 square by 2g. And we already know that U2 is greater than U1. So this term is higher, right? So that's why P2, what should happen to that? In order for it to remain a constant, P2 should reduce, right? As U2 increases, P2 should reduce. So as the velocity increases, it gains in the kinetic energy, it should lose in the pressure energy. Okay, that's how it will remain a constant. So P2 will go down, pressure at point 2 will be less than the pressure at point 1. So this is a simple thing that you can remember. If gravity doesn't play any role, if the height is same, okay, or if the gravitational effects are negligible, velocities are much higher than what gravitational effects can do. If the kinetic energy is much higher, pressure energy is much higher, then what will happen is when velocity increases, pressure will decrease. When velocity decreases, pressure will increase to make the entire left hand side constant. Okay, now let's go to another example of an airplane wing. So let us take a cross section of the airplane wing. This is an airplane. If you take a cross section of this wing, right, from here, from this side, from the side view, if you look at it from here, it looks like this. Okay. This is also known as airfoil. This shape is known as airfoil shape. Just scroll. Now what is happening is the air is flowing like this above the wing and below the wing. Okay. If you see it here on an airfoil, the air is flowing like that and below also. So what is happening here is the airfoil is curved like this. There is a curvature to it. If you see at a point here, if the flow was steady and everything else, actual flow is not steady and it doesn't rejoin after some distance. There are lots of vortices and other things that are there. But we'll assume that the flow rejoins after some distance. Okay, at these 2 points, let's say it is just the atmospheric velocity which is zero, okay, or whatever the wind velocity is. So we'll assume that it is relatively zero as compared to the velocity of the airplane. Because the airfoil is traveling in the air, it is not that the air is blowing over the airfoil, but you can uh, take whatever frame of reference you want to take. So when you see it from the frame of reference of the wind, okay, or from the frame of reference of an observer outside the airplane, you will see that the airfoil is moving, and at some distance ahead of the airplane, the wind is uh, traveling at the wind velocity or it is static, and after some distance behind the airfoil, it is the wind velocity or it is stagnant. So the velocities here are same. Okay. Now if we see from the point of view of the airfoil, what is happening here? You see that the wind has to travel, or the air particles have to travel a larger distance above the airfoil and a smaller distance below the airfoil. Because it is, if I magnify this, if I draw it like this, or if I draw an airfoil which looks like this, then you can see it clearly that the wind or the air particles have to travel a larger length when they travel above the airfoil, and when they travel below the airfoil it is a shorter distance. So where will the velocity be higher for the air particles? Above the airfoil, right? Because they have to travel the same distance and the velocity will become same after that distance, u infinity, u infinity. Okay? And they have to travel a larger distance above the airfoil. Okay. So from this very crude analysis, this is not such a good analysis, this is very crude. You can say that the velocity at the top is higher, which is also experimentally verified. It is higher. The velocity at the top and velocity at the bottom. Let's call these two ut and ub at some point here and at some point here. Ut is more than ub. Okay. This is experimentally verified, and theoretically also analytically you can find it out, not for a for an actual airplane, but for a small velocity where you can apply some assumptions, okay, that the flow rejoins after the airfoil and so on. So let's say this is given, ut is more than ub. Now what can you say about the pressures at these 2 points? So tell me the relationship between pt and pb. Can you write it? Okay, that is correct. That is the correct answer actually. And that's how an airplane flies, because pressure at the bottom is more than the pressure at the top. PB is more than PT. If I draw it again here, an airfoil, this is the pressure at the bottom. I am drawing it with big arrows. This is the pressure that is being applied on the bottom surface, and at the top it is less. So there is a net force in the upward direction because bottom pressure is more than the top pressure. So there is a net upward force because of the shape of the airfoil and because the airfoil is moving ahead. Okay, because there is some velocity ut and ub. The more the velocity will be, the more will be the pressure difference. Okay, that also you can see from the Bernoulli's equation, because you will have u1 square minus u2 square, that will be equal to p2 minus p1 by rho g and all these constants, coefficients. So the more the velocity you will have, the more will be the pressure difference. Okay, and this is happening because of the shape of the airfoil. You are getting this lift force. This is the lift. So how do you calculate the lift? Pressure at the bottom times the area of the bottom face minus pressure at the top multiplied by the area of the top face, very crudely speaking, because pressure will vary across the airfoil, but we are assuming that Pt is constant above and Pb is constant below. So if you subtract these two forces, you will get the lift force on one wing. And then similarly on the other wing, similarly on the entire airplane body. Okay, but here we are missing something. Earlier we said that we cannot apply Bernoulli's equation uh, for two separate streamlines. We can apply it only along a streamline. But here what we are doing is we are applying it on two different streamlines, right? On two different points here which lie on two separate streamlines. So how can we justify this? There is a bottom streamline and there is a top streamline. Now we can justify this by saying that the conditions here are same, velocity, pressure, these are same at this point. So you can apply Bernoulli's equation between this point 1 and point 2 and between point 1 and point 3, because point 1 is common. So you can say that this left hand side that you had, P by rho g plus V square by 2g for point 1 is equal to P by rho g plus V square by 2g for point 2. Also from the second equation you will get P by rho g plus V square by 2g for point 1 is same as P by rho g plus V square by 2g for point 3. So from there you get that P by rho g plus V square by 2g for point 2 and 3 are also same. So from that argument you can say that this is valid, this application of Bernoulli equation between point 2 and 3. Okay. So I hope this is clear. If you have any questions you can ask now. Okay, if there are no questions, we'll end it here. Thank you.